Grace and peace to all of you resonating lights, you echoes of eternity. Thank you for joining us on this Sunday morning's streamcast. I hope you're watching us live here on Facebook. Remember to leave a comment, like, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We're doing a tag team episode this morning. It's typical that we usually go one speaker on a Sunday morning, kind of give the platform to share what God has given. But we got into a conversation about a week and a half ago that felt like it was really uncovering some ripe, fertile ground to plow and to plant seed in. And we got so excited about it that we're just going to take the opportunity to go ahead and get the ball rolling. And we hope that all of you that are watching at home are excited because, as I was telling the congregation here that's with us today, we're beginning to embark on the next level of ministry. We're going to begin our podcast stream here shortly. We're getting queued up and geared up for that, thanks to all of your giving and gifts of love and donations that help us continue to push out and push forward the message of finding our true identity in the love and belief of God. And we're excited today because here with AJ, he's just got some good stuff. But we're going to connect in several ideas that we've been discussing from Stoicism and the wisdom that we can take from Stoicism through the writings of Marcus Aurelius and his meditations, all the way through the early church, the understanding of eternal punishment coming from the school of Carthage in Rome. And as we discussed with Brent, we believe that, or I believe, my contention is at least, that Rome never fell. It just transitions its power from the government, the military, into a church. And that church overtook most of Europe during that time and period. And a lot of souls were lost in the process. And we got talking about Martin Luther, and we got talking about all these concepts, and we want to begin to build that out and unpack that a bit more. And the title of today's sermon is, Will You Remain DEI'd Purple? If we remember the quote, and I'll read it again, from Marcus Aurelius, beware of becoming Caesarified, dyed in purple. It does happen. Keep yourself simple, good, guileless, dignified, unpretentious, devoted to justice, pious, kind, affectionate to others, and resolute in carrying out your proper tasks. So what is he saying there? As a man, he recognized his position as Caesar, as the emperor of Rome, that position could overtake his entire being. Who he really was not an emperor. He was something else. He was something more. He recognized within himself, as we all must, the divinity that lives within the body. The body wears the purple robe. The body wears the crown. The body is seen by all other human beings and all other people in its realm, in its kingdom. What's not so easy to see is what lies underneath. And not just underneath the robes, but underneath the man. And Marcus Aurelius was in tune with this. See, there's an understanding of, and I'm going to nerd out a little bit here just to begin the podcast. They dyed these robes and these garments for emperors and kings in Tyrian purple. And that's Tyre from Lebanon. That's where Tyrian comes from. The purple comes from this specific sea snail that produces this mucus. And they would work tirelessly. It's a very laborious task. You either could milk the snails, or the easier way would be to crush and destroy the snails to get all of the mucus out. And that was oftentimes what was mostly done. Now, here is the tragedy in making this color. Approximately 12,000 sea snails only makes about 1.4 grams of purple dye. That's just enough to dye the very corner piece of a garment. So when you're talking about the robes of an emperor, you're talking about a lot of sea snails being crushed, a lot of people dedicated or enslaved to that task of just killing these animals and making this dye that's very expensive and hard to come by. And what I believe Marcus Aurelius is identifying is this outward task, this outward appearance is not worth what we're putting people through to get it. It really means nothing in the grand scheme of things. But he also recognized if I wear this garment and I become the symbol of this garment, I become what this garment means, then not only will I have a purple garment on, but that will dye my entire being purple, and that will color my world. So that's the question we ask, is will you remain dyed purple? Because the things of this life will dye you colors. Whether that be your experiences, whether that be traumas, whether that be status, finances, wealth, a lack thereof, education or a lack thereof. These things color our world because it colors our thoughts. What we have to understand today is that God doesn't want us to be any one color. God gave us a color that's white. White light, which is the combination of every color in the color spectrum. God gave us a rainbow. When we combine that rainbow, we get the color white. That's where we're going today. That's the idea behind the message. That's the question we want you asking yourself is, will you remain dyed purple? Even if it's not purple, even if it's not status or finances or the position, is something in your life that's put a garment on you that now you identify with as yourself. And it's just a garment. It's just on the exterior. It's just on the human body. Will you remain dyed that color? Or will you allow God to include all of the colors in your world? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm kind of the reason we're talking about being dyed purple, because that was the main thing. It leaped out of I think I was watching you on a stream, but it was like he leaped out of that stream when he started talking about this, because it started registering deep, deep, deep within me, because the idea that Caesar had to robe himself in purple to keep the appearance of royalty, right? Because underneath the robe, what do you have? Mm-hmm. A man. Mm-hmm. And we see this in business. We see this in church. We see this in all of these structures, all of these organizations. There's a rank, right? And the ranking officers have to look the part. So read the quote again. Read the quote.
Beware of becoming Caesarified.
Come on.
Dyed in purple. It does happen. Keep yourself simple, good, guileless, dignified, unpretentious, devoted to justice, pious, kind, affectionate to others, and resolute in carrying out your proper tasks.
So he's saying, if you are to remain dyed purple, that you cannot carry out
Correct.
Your proper tasks.
Yes.
If the image that we're trying to put out is more important than the tasks that we are trying to complete, is more important than the love that we are supposed to offer, if we stay dyed purple, we're never going to meet the people that don't sit at the table that you sit at. We're never going to meet, those people are never even going to get to have a seat at that table. But when you take the table out of the picture completely and say everyone's welcome to this feast, that's what Jesus has done, and that is what we're doing as His disciples. If you have your King James Bible or any other Bible, I'll be reading out of the King James Version, but if you have any other Bible, any Bible at all, turn to Matthew chapter 22. Matthew chapter 22. And we'll be starting in verse 15. And let this setup here be playing in the background music of your brain as we're reading this. Anybody else got background music going in their brain all the time? I don't know. Some of the craziest songs from 1995 will just pop up in my brain out of nowhere. I mean, just ridiculous. I mean, right now it's just girls want to have fun, and I don't know why. I have no idea why that song is in there, but it's there. It's there. I'm definitely not a girl. But that song's in the background of my mind. So let this idea of being dyed purple, take away the girls want to have fun out of your brain right now and put, this, what we're supposed to be talking about. It's going to be weird, dude. I'm just letting
Let's
you know.
go.
Verse 15.
We're here for it.
Then went the Pharisees and took counsel how they might entangle him in his talk. And they said, and they sent out unto him their disciples with Herodians, saying, Master, we know that thou art true. This is a huge statement from the Pharisees, because they're saying, we know what you're saying is something we ain't never heard, or something really what they're saying is we know that there's an echo. See, we call ourselves the Gathering Echo. We're calling this movement the Gathering Echo. Why do we call it the Gathering Echo? Because everybody knows the echo. Everybody knows that echo once you hear it. Once your ears and your heart hear the voice of Jesus, that's a voice that you've been hearing from eternity's past. It's not a voice that you just decided to admit, believe, confess. No, this is the echo that you've heard from the beginning. It's the echo that you heard in your mother's womb. Before you were even formed in your mother, you heard this echo. And that's what's going on with the Pharisees when they say, we know you are true. We know that thou art true, and teach us the way of God in truth. And neither carest thou for any man, for thou regardest not the person of men. Are you ready for what the word person means there?
Here it comes.
Prosopon. Prosopon means the countenance, appearance, fashion, surface, man's person. Man's second person. What they're saying is, we know that you could care less about what's on the outside. We know you could care less about being dyed purple, right? We know that you could care less about what we look like. But what do they say?
But look at this. Look in verse 16. What he's saying, I believe, is true. But have you ever talked to someone who knows something about you and they have disdain for it? So they know that you're an honest person, and that really grinds their gears because they know they're a dishonest person. So they'll come up to you and they'll make a comment like, "Oh yeah, we know you. You always tell the truth, right?" There's this smug air of entitlement that I believe you can read in, and this is just me. You don't have to read this in there if you don't want to, but what I read is a smug air of entitlement as they're making these statements. Oh, we know thou art true, and teach us the way of God in truth. Neither carest thou for any man, or regardest not the outer appearance or the surface. We know you don't care anything for our robes and our garments, which we dye in royal blue through the same exact process as the emperors. Wow. Now they couldn't use purple because that was only for emperors. That was a statement. Being donned in purple was a phrase used to let someone know that person had been made emperor. But these Pharisees and Sadducees, these high priests, would have garments that were dyed in a royal blue. So when they're making this comment, we know you don't care for our garments that we've dyed in this royal blue, even though they're important, even though they're significant, even though I wear them with pride because of the power it gives me over the people. So that's how I read that verse. This is who Jesus is dealing with. This is the introduction. And if you've ever been introduced to a conversation with someone like this, you know it's not going to go very well. This is going to end in either a fist fight or we're going to walk away in disagreement. And I might be a little smug myself if that's how you intro me, but I'm still working on me. Give me some grace. Go ahead.
So they're obviously trying to catch him here because they know that everything he's saying we can't really say anything about. So let's start trying to hang him up in our world. Right. We can't trap him in his real world. We can't trap him in the truth, but we can trap him in our structures, our anthropos, our man-made cities, our dogma, our doctrine.
Right.
We can trap him by saying, oh, you don't show respect to Caesar, do you? Look at what they say. Tell us, therefore, what thinkest thou? Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar or not? But Jesus perceived their wickedness and said, why tempt me, ye hypocrites?
So let's go back to Marcus Aurelius for a second. This is a quote. A man's worth is no greater than his ambitions. Nothing happens to any man that he is not formed by nature to bear. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. The universe is change. And we know that to be a fact. The universe is constantly changing, moving. Our life is what our thoughts make it. Now look at verse 17. What did they ask? What thinkest thou? What color are you going to give us to use against you? Wow. Are you going to give us the color blue, red? Are you going to go more regal and purple? Or are you going to go off the charts and just give us another color that we can whittle down and find a problem with and use against you?
Good God. And it's the same thing that everyone's doing in our society right now. How can we separate you? How can we separate you from the grand idea that we are all one body in Christ?
Because their color is condemnation and judgment. That's what's coloring their entire world, is how can I condemn this man who is now in competition with what we're doing and what we stand for? He's not out here in royal robes. He's not following the rules and the traditions of the synagogue. He's not doing things the way that we do things to corral and keep the people under our thumb. So the color of their world, the color of their thoughts is in judgment and condemnation. But we know who they're talking to didn't come to condemn anyone, but to save everyone. His judgment has already been made, and it's salvation for each and every one of his children.
We get asked these questions all the time, and they know that they can hang you up by this question. What do you believe about this?
Yep.
What do you believe about this group of people?
Yeah.
Because if you believe that about this group of people, we can put you in this box.
Yep.
And if you're in this box, you can't reach these people anymore.
We can discredit you.
So what do you believe about these people? That's why you have to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And it's Jesus' response. He says, bring me the tribute money. Show me the tribute money. And they brought unto him a penny. And he said unto them, whose is this image and superscription? They said unto him, Caesar's. Then saith he unto them, render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things which are God's. When they had heard these words, they marveled and left him and went their way. So, I say the same thing to you when you're asked these questions. What do you believe about this? Or what do you say about this group of people? What will happen to this group of people? What will happen here? What will happen there? All you have to do is look them into the eyes and say, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. And in that you answer their question in the same way Jesus answered theirs. They belong to my Father. Yes. Go for it. Go for it.
So good. Well, what you see there with that quote, and the quote from Marcus Aurelius there, is typically used in a positive way. To say that your ambitions, your goals, forward you through life, that you're formed by nature to carry and bear the load of those goals and those dreams. We're all dreamers. So if we're living our dream and we're pushing forward in our dream, then we are naturally capable of carrying the load of that dream. That's our potential doing the work of our goals and our dreams given to us by our Creator. The universe is constantly changing, but our life is what our thoughts make it. So if we're in the present, if we're taking in everything, if we're including all the colors of the spectrum, then we color our world without judgment, condemnation. We color our world without separation and division and exclusion. We don't get trapped in the DEI'd, the D-E-I-D, the diversity, equity, inclusion. We get caught up in the divinity, enlightenment, and inclusion. Because both include the word inclusion, but one excludes and the other doesn't. And that's an understanding that we come to. Because what we're seeing here in this understanding is that the thoughts that we have, the divisions, the biases, the prejudices that exist, color our thoughts, and that affects our behaviors. That affects our goals and our intentions. Now, if we read this quote and we think about the possibility of someone who's not striving for good, but given over to their own darkness, their own proclivities towards dark or seedy things, bad or evil ways, then their ambitions, their evil ambitions, also give them a burden to carry that they can carry. They can be that evil or bad thing. They can be an evil God or a good God. They have the ability to be both. And what we see here is the children of God and Pharisees being evil gods. And what we see in Jesus is him being a good God. The contrast is right in front of us. We don't need mythology to externalize them into deities. We understand that we are gods. We've come to that understanding that we are the children of God. So what we're seeing is what the mythos, what these different civilizations would externalize into these other beings that exist outside of us. This is happening right here on earth. A good God is having a confrontation with an evil God right here in the ether, in the ethereal experience of heaven, which is what God called this earth. This is a battle that's going on. Now, they're not sea creatures and they're not given animal parts, and it's not as wild and crazy in the demonstration or the illustration of the story, but these are men, and these are gods, and this is the conversation.
Before we get away from this conversation with the Pharisees, all right. So as I kind of put these two things up in the same light, when they're asking him, what do you say about our purple? What do you say about Caesar? And can you pay tribute to Caesar and still be who you are? They'll ask you the same question is, what do you say about these people? And can you answer that question and still be who you are? Do you want to know what Paul says about this?
I do.
He says, who shall separate us from the love of Christ?
Right.
Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? As it is written, for thy sake we are killed all the day long. We are counted as sheep for the slaughter. Nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. For I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. So throw that up in their questions the next time you don't even have to answer their question because Jesus didn't. That's where we get in so much trouble with the people you're trying to reach. They set up these traps and you're not wise as serpents and harmless like doves. You think, oh God, I got to answer because if I don't answer, they're going to say that. No, nothing will separate us from the love of God. Period. That's what Jesus did. He took their identity away from Caesar. Because Caesar does not have our identity. We are not supposed to be dyed purple. We're supposed to be white.
Right.
Light. The white light that is Christ. All right. Go for it.
Yeah, so when he says render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, well, if you're not dyed purple, then why do you have any need for those things that are associated with that color? I don't need that. That's an external thing. That's a temporal thing. That's a material thing. I have no need of those things. Give away all that I have and just follow God. Because then I've given unto Caesar all that's Caesar's.
Come on.
I'm not weighed down by the weight of what Caesar wants me to carry, of what Caesar wants me to care about, of what Caesar wants me to pursue, of what Caesar wants me to achieve, of what Caesar wants me to accomplish. All of that belongs to you, Caesar, so you can have it all back.
It's the same thing that happens with us.
Right.
And that's what happens, people, wherever you go, whatever organization you're a part of, it does not have to be your identity. It is not your identity, right? But you live sometimes in your psyche like it is.
Right.
We live in our minds sometimes like, that's the first thing we say to somebody when we meet them. What do you do? That's the wrong question.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Right.
Who are you? I am God's. I belong to God. I don't belong to Caesar. That's why Jesus didn't get hung up in the weeds. So we shouldn't get hung up in the weeds either. You don't have to draw a hard line on the exact question that they're asking. You have to include the world in the fact that there is no separation. Jesus eliminated separation when he died and rose. It's over. It's done. And you are supposed to show the world that, hey, the victory's already done. We're not dyed purple anymore. We don't have to wear purple anymore.
So how do we get to the place? And this is the question. Because the question that we ask is, will you remain dyed purple? And that implies you don't have to.
Right.
You can stay, but you don't have to. You can be all of the colors of the rainbow. You can be that white light that we see echoed, and we'll get there a little bit later in the scriptures with Jesus himself and us by the time we get to Revelation. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to go back to Meditations one more time because I think...
And for those that don't know, what is Meditations?
So Meditations is essentially the journal of Marcus Aurelius. He wrote that as in his philosophical mode. So as emperor, he was emperor, but he was also a philosopher. Now, the language of philosophy at the time of Marcus Aurelius was Greek. He spoke Latin. He wrote all of his meditations in the philosophical language of Greek, and he intended for it to remain private. I've said this before. He would probably be mortified to hear us reading these things aloud and streaming them for the world to see, as this is his private journal, but it contains so much relatable wisdom. Not just in the personal context, but in the biblical context, because this man pursued his own divinity and his connection with the sacred. Now, they may have called it different things or externalized God in different ways or given God different divisions within themselves, as we know human beings are prone to do. It's very hard to get human beings to get to monotheism, and you see that throughout the centuries because human beings are tribal. We divide into groups, and if God does one thing over here, well, that must be the God of that thing. And then if God does one thing over here, well, that must be the God of that thing. And then we can set up altars in both things, and then we can pray to God that do both things. As we've identified how God is God in that thing, that nature, that structure, that movement, the weather. All of these things become significant throughout human history. And what we see is they get culled down and culled down and culled down into an understanding that all of the things that exist in this life come from one source. And here's it's a beautiful picture. We're going to get to this too. I'm so excited about it because God made it real to me today. We always talk about the concept of time, space, and matter, that God created that construct and is outside of it. What I want you to think about is the Logos and the word that we've given you on the Logos, and that being the creative force, the creative essence of God that he's gifted us with. Where does that remain? In the mouth of God. So not only is he on the outside of it, but it's so close to him. Just a single word and creation begins to move. When we sang that song, it's so poignant. 100 billion galaxies are formed with a word. Because he is outside of time, space, and matter, but time, space, and matter is not outside of him. It is within him. It is within the very Logos of his breath and word. And that is the gift that we've been given, to understand that the entire universe, all of its galaxies, all of its stars, time, space, matter, past, present, future, lie within us, within the God that lives inside of this structure. A single word sets galaxies into motion. How easy is it to move a mountain when you can create galaxies and universes? It's a powerful thing. We get to this white light. How do we get there? How do we change? How do we include the rest of the colors so that we're not dyed any single color? Well, Marcus would put it this way. People seek retreats for themselves in the country, by the sea, near the mountains. And you too are especially prone to desire such things. Tough word, but here it comes. But this is a sign of ignorance, since you have the power to retire within yourself whenever you wish. For nowhere can a person retire more full of peace and free from care than into one's own soul. Above all, if one has that place within oneself into which one can turn one's attention, one is immediately at ease. And by ease, I mean nothing other than the right ordering of the whole person. Continually give yourself this kind of retreat and regenerate yourself. We've talked about the washing of regeneration enough. If you haven't heard that articulated beautifully enough, go listen to Brent Grigg. But keep your rules of living brief and basic, so that when consulted, when asked what you think about things, they will immediately wash away all distress and send you back to your work without resentment. How do we do it? Well, God has given us a temple. That temple is your sanctuary. We talk about church and we talk about sanctuaries and we talk about temples as man-made structures. I have a God-made structure already. My sanctuary is right here. If the externalities, the external consequences, the external problems of this life become too much, I don't need a vacation to the beach or to the mountains or to go on a trip or go to an amusement park. Those things are great. But what we find out about those trips and those events is as soon as they're over, we're right back to the problem. The peace is gone just as quickly as it arrived because we haven't removed that dye or we haven't been dyed the other colors that we need. So what is the statement meaning? The statement's meaning is all the divinity you need is already inside of you. If you will retreat into the sanctuary God has given you, if you will retreat in there where He is with you, we'll never leave you, we'll never forsake you. The peace and understanding you will be given will regenerate your being and put you at ease. Why? Because you've rightly ordered yourself and reordered and aligned yourself with the sacred. And when you're aligned with the sacred, you render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's without resentment, without bitterness, without struggle, without pain, without feeling the suffering, because the suffering has been felt by our elder brother already. We can cast aside those things and press forward to the mark. It's the high calling that's within Christ Jesus, and give unto God what is God's, which is us, in the childlike of our being, children of God, with that understanding, with that belief that there's nowhere I can retreat to have more peace of mind, to have a better understanding of what God wills me to do, and a better comprehension of the things of this life that really do not matter and do not need to color my thoughts, is within the sanctuary of myself. It's a beautiful place to be, and it's a beautiful understanding that I pray myself and all of you begin to grow in, because it's not something that's easy to do. It's not something that we're good at doing for the most part, and it requires that work.
I didn't realize, because I went over to Josh's house last night and we we did this in his kitchen. And this is what we were hoping for today, that maybe our conversation could be had with the world. And I didn't realize when you were reading that meditation that this past week has been a personally difficult week for me, but I started doing this exercise every morning, and it's by Tony Robbins. A lot of you probably know who Tony Robbins is. He's a motivational speaker. He's been around a long time, plays in Shallow Hal. So you may know that, you may not, but David knows who I'm talking about. But Tony Robbins made this exercise. What's up, Doc? Doc came up to say, yes, Shallow Hal.
Great movie.
We're not endorsing nor denying that movie. So anyway.
I might endorse it.
Yeah. So Tony Robbins has this exercise called priming, okay? So for the last 5 mornings, I have done this exercise called priming, and I didn't know that what you just read was mirroring what I've already been doing this week, retreating within. So this is how it works, and we won't do it because it takes some time, and you need to reflect, but this is basically the principle of it. You raise both arms up, and for like 30 reaches, you start pulling down, as if a faith act to pull down that energy from God to you. And you go like 30 times. And then you sit there with your palms open. And then you do it again. And you do that for like 4 or 5 minutes. And then you realize that there's a there's a change within your body. Yes. And you're retreating within yourself. And then when you get to that state, he says, by the time you've done all that, you feel your heart pounding. And I've started my days like this week. And you put your hand over your heart and you feel the blood rushing into your heart. And he says, that's your gift. You were given this gift a long time ago. Breathe deeply into your heart. Feel your heart. Feel your heart. And then he says, and all this is with your eyes closed. So we will do this portion just for a moment. Everybody close your eyes. Everybody close your eyes. And envision a happy memory, a happy moment in your life. Could have been any moment, small or big, from your childhood, from last week. Think about that moment, something that brings you happiness, something that you're grateful for, gratified, so over the moon about. Breathe in that moment. Feel your body. Breathe that moment in. Step into that moment. Thank God right now for that moment. Give Him praise for that moment, whatever it is. And then we do that 2 more times. You can open up your eyes now, but that's just a little glimpse and just a little exercise of how you could retreat in. But this week I've sat in my office and cried every morning thinking, oh my God, I'm not all the things that I have to be. I am Him. I am who I am by the grace of God. And this gratitude, starting your day off with gratitude, because when you start thinking about those moments and those reflections, you immediately want to go out and make a difference in everybody else's life. And you come in contact with people who are, or God knows what's going on in their internal mind right now when you come in contact with them. But if they see you and they see that there's something different about you, that's what the Pharisees saw in Jesus. So that's what we're talking about, retreating in. I didn't mean to do that, but go for it.
Don't apologize. This is how our conversations go. And sometimes we get completely off the script and just go wherever it takes us. So that's always a good thing. So when we talk about these colors, when we talk about the color of our world, it should be this white light that is the inclusion of all colors. No biases, no prejudices, no divisions, but every color is included in our washing of regeneration. The white that we become, the garments that we wear are white. Well, where do we see that in the Scripture? Well, Isaiah 1:18 in the ESV reads, "Come now, let us reason together, says the Lord, though your sins are like scarlet." Now, scarlet is a color, but those sins, like we said, whatever color it may be, whatever the sin may be, whatever is causing you to miss the mark, whether that's murder or rape or stealing or lying or coveting or envy or judgment or condemnation. The list goes on and on and on. If it's drawing you away from your divinity, away from your true identity, and is coloring your world, though they be that color, though your thoughts be that color, though your world may be that seen in that color, they shall be as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they shall become like wool. And how do we know this? We've talked about it before. We've seen it before. Mark 9 and Matthew 17. When Jesus is transfigured before the disciples, his face shines like the sun, the light of a star, and his clothes become radiant, intensely white as light, as no one on earth could bleach them. And then that takes us to where we got to last night. And that's where I think we should go now, is John 19.
Yeah, so go to John 19. If you're following along at home, turn to John 19. Maybe open up another tab. Go to BibleGateway.com. Type in John 19, and you can pick from 1 million different versions. Verse 1. Then Pilate took Jesus. We're in verse 1, chapter 19 of John. Then Pilate, therefore, took Jesus and scourged him. And the soldiers platted a crown of thorns and put it on his head. Get ready for this. And they put on him a purple robe and said, Hail, King of the Jews! And they smote him with their hands. So think about the conversation earlier with the Pharisees, and now fast forward to this moment, and Jesus is being clothed by them in purple. It changes the way you see the scourging. It changes the way you see his suffering for you. The very robes that we don't want to be identified in, he became the identification for you. He wore that robe, so they put this robe on him. Look at this. Pilate therefore went forth again, verse 4, and said unto them, Behold, I bring him forth to you that you may know that I find no fault in him. Get ready. Then came Jesus forth, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, and Pilate said unto them, Are you ready for this, church? Behold the anthropos. And we say anthropos because that is the word for man. And the word anthropos means literally man-faced. And we've taught this over and over and over and over and over. The man face is a different association from the child. Okay? You are a child of God. The anthropos is the man face. It's the purple dye. Do you see it? He comes beat, scourged before them, and Pilate props him up before them and says, Behold the anthropos. Why is that significant? Because he became our purple. He took on our purple. He took on these robes that we identify ourselves in. You feel lonely, he became lonely. You feel anxious, he became anxious. You feel lost, he became lost. You feel broken, he became broken. You feel dead, he became dead. You feel ashamed, he became ashamed. He wore your purple. And Pilate said, Behold the man. It reminds me of when John says, Behold the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. Woo! That's exactly the same moment. That is exactly the same moment. And Pilate refused to change the name. Pilate refused to not call him their king. Something deep inside of Pilate knew that this was the one for them, and they wouldn't crown him, so Pilate did in his own way. I know, yes, he scourged him, but we're going to get into this, man. Look at what Pilate went next. Verse 6, sorry, I'm excited. When the chief priests, therefore, and officers saw him, they cried out, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. Pilate saith unto them, Take ye him, and crucify him, for I find no fault in him. The Jews answered, "We have a law, and by our law he ought to die." Because why? Because he made himself the Son of God. And what did he tell us to do? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. And that is what is his death sentence in this regard.
It also shows right there the lack of understanding of the people.
Yeah. Come on.
He made himself into a son of God. No, he came a son of God.
Right.
He didn't become anything. He is the I am, here to show us that we are too. It's a lack of understanding. Again, we see in Jesus and Stephen, what did they pray for? Forgiveness, for they know not what they do. What are they really saying? They don't know who they are, and because they don't know who they are, they don't recognize the I am that I am. It's a big point to make. These distinctions matter. They're accusing him of becoming something he wasn't, instead of seeing that he was already that and showing them that's what you are too. And Pilate finds no fault in the man face. And like you were saying, what did Jesus become in that moment? He became all of our misgivings, all of our shortcomings. But he also became the symbol of power and tyranny. He wore the robes and the garments that Marcus Aurelius would later warn us about. Why? Not to keep them on, not to be dyed by their color. Oh, but he did something else. See, that purple garment, when they put it on him, it didn't dye him purple, but he dyed it with the blood of the Lamb. And the blood of the Lamb is what washes us white as snow. This all is connected for a reason. We have to understand and see what's being written here. Those garments were dyed by his blood, the life-saving blood of the Lamb. The changing blood. The universe is changing. It's changing. Why? Because of the blood of the Lamb. And he was about to wash every single being in that blood and remove every idea of color or pigment or dye that you would ever be put on, that would ever be put on you, or you would be made to wear, to let you know that doesn't have to dye you, that doesn't have to dye your thoughts. The blood of the Lamb will wash you, cleanse you. You'll be as white as snow, because I am the Father of lights, in whom there is no variableness, and that is the white intended for you. And you, and you, and all of you. I know I'm getting loud today, and I'm sorry, but it's exciting.
It's behold the Lamb, man.
Because we're seeing these things that we've read about and we've taught and we've gone over for all of these years and all of my life. This is not the first time I've read the story of Pilate in the great hall with Jesus. Oh, but it's the first time I'm seeing it this way. It's the first time it's becoming real to me this way. To see that the garment that he wore is capable of dyeing your entire world in a negative way, in a way that takes you out of God's will. And even in that moment, when that garment is placed on him, he dyes it with the color of his own blood, the salvation of our very beings. That's the in that moment. The rest is a demonstration. He was formed by nature. He was formed by God to bear the cross, to bear the suffering. He voluntarily lays down. Why? Because I've already dyed the robes they intended to dye me with. I've already changed every dyed robe they'll ever put on my children, no matter what anybody puts on them, whether it was your parents, whether it's your coworker, whether it's your employer, whether it's your best friend, whatever garment they put on you, God has already dyed it and stained it in his blood to turn it white as the snow. Oh, it's salvation in that moment. He takes a garment that could dye him, and he dyes it with his own salvation. He dyes it with the blood of the Lamb. He dyes it with the understanding of the I am, the Logos of God and the sacred.
I got to share something that was sent in from Ty Mobley. He's a dear friend of ours, and he comes to church here, but he texts me as we've been up here. He says, purple on a poster tree means no trespassing. Purple on a poster tree means no trespassing. They put that purple robe on him, which was supposed to represent every single bit of the status that they wanted him to be colored in.
Yep.
And you know why people feel like they can't reach you or you can't reach people? It's because of the garment that you're wearing. It's saying to them, no trespassing. This is private. You can't come past my garment. You can't come past my identification. You can't come past my anxiety. You can't come past my lostness. You can't come past my brokenness. That's who I am. And Jesus puts on the purple robe to say, no, we're going to take down the no trespassing signs. We're taking down the no trespassing signs from the heart of man, and we're letting the grace of God pour back into that thing.
Now think about this. We go back to the garden for a second. Adam and Eve adorn themselves in the armaments of gardeners. And God slays a lamb, sheds the blood of a lamb, and puts on them what? Wool. As we read in Isaiah, though they are red as crimson, they shall become like wool, because the garment God has always intended you to wear is a white garment. It's not a colored garment. It's not colored with the things of this world. It's not colored with the thoughts of your mind. It's not colored with humanity. It's white as the driven snow. It's a white, intense light. It's a wool. It's what he clothes them in. There's understanding there too, from the beginning to the end. And we see that. We see that in Revelation 7. Who are the ones coming out of the great tribulation? What do they look like? Well, they've had their robes washed from the blood of the Lamb and made them white. Revelation 19, the armies of heaven, all of us will be arrayed, not in chainmail, not in armor, not in purple robes, not in blue robes, not in dyed garments, but in fine linen, white and pure. We're following him on white horses. It's the inclusion of all things. It's the inclusion of all God in this life. Because there's a lot of God we reject. There's a lot of God we still don't understand. There's a lot of God that's not included in our color palette. And that's why we haven't become that white yet.
That's right.
It's still a work in progress. Is it better? All the time.
Yeah.
It's getting better all the time. We're finding more and more believers who are going further and further in the truth, further and further in their understanding, and getting closer and closer to the divinity, enlightenment, and inclusion that we're teaching in this ministry, and further away from the faux diversity, inclusion, and equity. Mm-hmm. The faux morality or real morality. Truth or excuse, inclusion or exclusion. More and more people are coming to this understanding.
It fired up the disciples. It fired up the disciples that Jesus didn't wear purple, right? It fired them up that he didn't fall into the Pharisees. But you know what the disciples tried to do? They tried to make their own color scheme. They said, who's the greatest in the kingdom? Who's the greatest in the kingdom? You don't wear purple, so let's make our own color. Let's fly our own banner. Let's do our own thing. Who's the greatest in the kingdom? Jesus says, oh, grab that little snot-nosed, boogery kid right there. Bring him to me. He takes this kid who looks like he is just having a party, totally oblivious to whatever they're talking about, totally oblivious to the church service that they're trying to have. He takes that kid, sets him in the midst, and says, unless you become as one of these, you shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. That's right. What is he trying to say? He's trying to say something that is from a book that I'm recommending to all of you. It's called A Country Called Childhood. It is by Jay Griffiths. This is what she says about it. This is what she says about light. Light is the great presence in the inner childscape. There is, it seems to children, some luminous core to life, which they recognize in every age and every culture. Wordsworth describes the radiance which was once so bright in childhood. Light is the literal and metaphoric illumination. Listen, but as childhood fades, so does the light. Whither is fled the visionary gleam? Where is it now, the glory and the dream? When adults retain the romantic sensibilities of childhood, those illuminations are yet the fountain light of all our day, are yet a master light of all our seeing. Hear that again. Listen now. Light is the literal and metaphoric illumination, but as childhood fades, so does the light. When adults retain the romantic sensibilities inward, that's what we were talking about,
Right.
Not retreating to the dadgum beach again. So we got to go to the beach so we keep our mind right. We got to go to the beach because we're going crazy. Got to go to the mountains. I ain't going to be all right until I go to the mountains and I get a vacation. No, retreat inward. Retreat into the childlike. And this is what she says. When adults retain that romantic sensibility of childhood, those illuminations are yet the fountain light of all our day, are yet a master light of all our seeing. Children have a kind of light, an otherwise light, to see things by two light. Two light, one word. The invisible light of imagination, so that they may be guided by their inner lights. To think is to reflect like a mirror, like water light. Their dazzled moments speak of their inner sunlight, streams of bright thought, when children are backlit by the sunshine of a different order. See, she says, as you become an adult, the light fades. But then when you retreat in, you realize it's just as bright and as glorious as it's always been.
That's right.
Another thing that Tony Robbins says, not to make this all about Tony Robbins, but this is the perfect setup for me sitting beside of Josh, because, it may not look like I have muscles like him, right? But I mean, just give us a little flex, just one flex. Come on. Let's see. No, don't.
No, that was good enough.
No, do it again. Let's see, one flex. Okay. Now, look at that, and you won't find that on me, right? But does it mean that I don't have a muscle?
Right.
Does it mean that I don't have a muscle?
That's right.
Does it mean that it's non-existent? Does it mean that if I wouldn't make the same decisions that he has made, that maybe in a few years I could come here and do the same thing and you would see it? That's the way the childlike is, my friends. It's still there. The light is still there, and it's ever bright. It's always bright.
Imagine it this way.
Yeah.
You ever seen like a projector? It's got that light. When you have nothing in it, it's just a bright white light. That's all it is, right? Well, now imagine you go from your childhood. You experience some trauma. Yeah. And that puts a slide of color over that white light. Now it's not white. Let's say it's blue. And then let's say you get to your teenage years. You have some spats with different folks, some different friends, some relationship struggles and issues. You get your heart broken a little bit. That puts in another slide, and let's say that slide is red. And then maybe you get to your adulthood, and those bitternesses and resentments that you haven't dealt with, and they've grown, and they've gotten bigger, and they've become to be more of a problem than they were before. And that's ruining some other relationships and experiences, and maybe some job experiences. And now that colors your world, let's say, with the color green. Yeah. Every time that slide is filled in with another color, the light gets dimmer and dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. Now, what AJ's saying is true. That light has never diminished one bit. It hadn't gone anywhere. Where I would disagree with the writing is it's not been dimmed at all. Right. That light is still just as strong, just as bright and glowing, just as strong on the inside of you, inside of this sanctuary, if only you would retreat inside to see it again.
And the more you go in there,
the more slides you start taking out. This is working out your salvation with fear and trembling, because when those slides get in there, they don't want to come back out. Right. Because not only are those slides coloring the light that's within you, it's coloring your whole world. Right. Everything about your life has been built and predicated on the color that these slides shade everything. Yeah. So, that process of taking those out, we don't remember who we are, so we don't remember what it's like to be a bright white light anymore. We don't remember what it's like to be that 2- and 3-year-old who's running around the house and dad's upset because work is being a problem and he's got to be on the phone and mom's in the kitchen cooking and can't take care of him right now, and he just disappears, or she just disappears into their own little world of imagination where their light is just as bright as the world could be because they've got nothing shading their world.
Right.
They've got no slides that they've put on their projector screen.
Yep.
They're just being who they are. When we treat within ourselves, what do we find? Oh, that little boy that was me. Oh. That little boy that was Joshua. That little boy that was operating, living, breathing, and being in his white light is still in there. And he says, you know what? You ready to play yet?
Yeah.
I've been in here a long time. You ready to play again? You ready to get back to it? Hey, I know this guy. He's my dad. He can help you get those color slides out of this thing, and we can shine bright again. We can go back to not letting the troubles of this world bother us. We can go back to the understanding that Jesus gave us that we don't have to think about the things of tomorrow. The things of tomorrow will take care of themselves. Right now, we're present and we're here to play. We're here to be in our imagination. We're here to be with our Father and accomplish the will that He has for us.
That's what I see in my son. My son Marshall. He's going to be 2 years old in May, but I realized this very recently that so we have 4 kids. The other 3, by the time they were his age, I realized that they had already developed something that he hasn't developed yet. And I realized this when he was coming through the living room playing the other night, and he had a hold of one of our dog's ears and wouldn't let go of it. And the dog was letting him know that you should let go. But Marshall was in some kind of other game. You know, he was in another world. He was playing. He was a little too rough with the dog. But I told him, and I took him away from the dog, and I said, Marshall, no, don't do that. Don't do that. And I'm making my face like I knew that I'm supposed to make my face like we know that our parents made that face. And when they made that face, we knew that stuff needed to stop, right? But then Marshall looks at me when I do that, and I say, don't pull the dog's ear, don't do that. He looks at me and goes, And I realized in that moment, he has no point of reference for the judgment that I'm trying to place on him. He has no idea, no point of reference in his brain that I am disapproving of his play. So, when he takes the kid and puts him in front of the disciples think he's shutting down their show, right? He is. That's exactly what he's doing.
Right.
Shutting down the show to show you a true color, the true, pure, bright, white light. That is Marshall. That is leading me in my inward meditations. So, we keep going. Let's keep going here. Where were we even at?
That one that gets us into Krishna.
Oh yeah. So listen, the child god Krishna's mouth is full of starlight. Go.
Okay, so that leads us into we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about the Hindu tradition, where childhood is portrayed in the divinity of the god Krishna. Okay, so I'm going to give you this little story, and I think it ties in things very beautifully.
Stretch your minds a little bit, guys.
Yeah. Let's do a little.
Stretch
it's
yourself.
Like the 7th inning stretch. We're getting close to the end. I promise. We're not going much longer. Ty's got on a purple shirt, so we got to talk to him anyway after service. I'm just kidding. See, he's making it. If y'all could have seen Ty's bicep, that's the one that's impressive.
Look at that.
All right, so I'm going to give you this story. Okay, so one day Krishna is playing with all of his playmates and Balarama.
And who is Krishna again? Tell us one more time.
He's got the god Krishna.
In what religion?
In the Hindu tradition.
Okay, go for it.
And he's portrayed as divinity in the childlike form. So he's young, he's a child. So he's joined, his friends joined him at the Balarama in dodging, a complaint with Mother Yasoda. Mother, so that's the mother of all the playmates and the children. They submitted, Krishna has eaten earth. Upon hearing this, so he's eating dirt. Krishna's over here eating dirt, Mom. I mean, we've seen this happen, right? This is very relatable. And Mother Yasoda, who was always full of anxiety over Krishna's welfare, picked Krishna up to look into his mouth and chastise him if he had eaten a handful of dirt. Because we don't want you eating a handful of dirt. Marshall, don't pull the dog's ear. We don't want you pulling the dog's ear. We don't want you eating a handful of dirt, right? So her eyes, fearful, she spoke to her son as follows. She says, Dear Krishna, why are you so restless that you have eaten dirt in a solitary place? Lord Krishna replied, My dear mother, I have never eating dirt. He says, all of my friends complaining against me are liars. I like this kid. He's just straight to it. They're all liars. If you think they're being truthful, well, you can directly look into my mouth and examine it for yourself. Okay, little guy. Let's see what's in there then. So Mother Yasota challenges Krishna, says, if you've not eaten earth, then open your mouth wide. As wide as you can open it. Let me really see inside that mouth of yours. When Krishna's ordered by his mother, he immediately opened his mouth just like any ordinary boy would when mom's being serious and it's time to investigate the matter. We've all known that. If you have a good mother, if you've had a mother in your life, we know what that's about. When she's ready to have a look, there ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She's going to have that look. That can either be comfortable or uncomfortable for you, your choice. In this situation, he was a wise child and did as his mother told him to. So Mother Yashoda saw him with his mouth wide open. And what she sees is the complete opulence of creation. She saw outer space in every direction. Mountains, islands, oceans, seas, planets, air, fire, moon, and stars. Time, past, present, future. She saw him. She saw herself. She saw every living, breathing being. Mother Yashoda saw within the mouth of her child everything necessary for the cosmic manifestation. Upon seeing all this, she became struck with awe and wondered whether she was dreaming or actually seeing something extraordinary. Well, what I would ask is, which eyes were you seeing with? If you were seeing with your human eyes, you may believe it was a dream. But if you were seeing through your divinity, if you were seeing through the God within yourself, then what you truly saw in your son, what you truly saw in that boy was exactly what God is and exactly what we are.
Behold the Lamb of God.
Behold the Lamb of God.
Takes away the sin of the world.
Emmanuel, God with us. Joseph, God looks like us. See, the temples that we have that are colored and painted different colors, they come in different shapes and sizes, and how they're adorned in different colors of the spectrum. When we strip all that away, when we render these man-made things back to man, when we render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, then we all are on the level footing of the cross, as Big Brent says, and we all stand there with white shining light where there's no variableness between any of us, no degrees of separation, no diversity quotas, no equity rules, no inclusionary, exclusionary rules, but we have divinity, enlightenment, and the inclusion of every color, every shape, every size, every cosmic manifestation of God that exists in life. And that life is an eternal one. Back to your book.
Jay Griffith, she comments on Krishna as well. She says the scampering antics of the child Krishna, butter stealer, milk spiller, whey sprayer, are not only indulged, but admired, as they represent the divine nature of the child's playfulness. Free, spontaneous, audacious, self-delighting, intense, vivacious, passionate, and mercurial. These qualities are considered divine and to be welcomed in adulthood as well as childhood. Listen here. As while Western society has stealthily portrayed play as puerile and sometimes even evil, Indian culture can see play as both funny and holy. Wow. In the juice, in the sap, and the chirrup, God is a child playing. Medieval Bhakti poetry of India wholly reverses the Western view so that God the Father is replaced by God the child, and a naughty one. As a mother is to a child, so is the poet to a radiant God. And the brilliance of a million bits of the universe in the infancy he obscures, wrote Sir Doss. The God in small people is openly, utterly, besottedly adored. And when Indian parents wish for their children to have a touch of Krishna, shining with mischief and vitality, they are welcoming the divinity of childhood.
It's beautiful. So will you remain dyed purple? Will you remain dyed whatever color colors your thoughts and shades your world and dims your light? Because we're called to be a light set up on a hill. We're called to shine for this world to see. And any dimming of that light is a tragedy. It's a tragedy because it doesn't have to stay that way. It doesn't have to be that way. And that's not to say some of these colors and some of these things that have dimmed your light were within your control. But whether you stay that way is within your control. We can't always control the things that happen to us. And sometimes our response to that isn't the one it should be. And it can create issues and problems that turn into a color that shades our world and dims our own light. God has given us a way. God has given us the truth. And God has given us the life to go within ourselves, to retreat within the sanctuary He provided us. Find our bright white light. Remove those colors. Remove those shades. And shine brightly again. Because Albaran Cabrera said it like this. Any part of the universe, in any part of the universe, there's a whole universe. Hamlet saw infinite space in a nutshell. William Blake saw a world in a grain of sand, a heaven in a wild flower, and eternity in an hour. What I see is a God, and in its mouth, all of the universe, time, space, matter, each and every one of us, and me included, in its mouth, and I see it in every human being that I am fortunate to encounter. Like C.S. Lewis, I recognize your divinity today. I recognize your status as a child of God, and I pray with you and for you that all dye is removed and the brightest your light can shine is every day of the rest of your life on this planet. This is an eternal promise. And I hope and pray that each of you have enjoyed this today as we've just talked it out. Try not to be too pretentious about it and formulaic and structured. This is the conversation that we've had, and thank God it went even better today than it did over the phone or last night. And I think that's because of the significance of each and every one of you. Because now we have more people to share this truth with, this understanding with, and grow that belief beyond this world's limitations. We ask that each and every one of you download the Subsplash app if you're interested in following along with our streamcast on any platform that is available. If you're interested in giving and paying your tithes, we did set that up to give us the opportunity to not have to have a tithing portion of the service, but to be able to make it easier for each and every one of you to pay your tithes or give your love offerings in a way that allows it to be organized, taken care of, and gives you a wonderful tax return opportunity for you as well. So we ask that you download that app and you interact with that app as much as possible. That does help us with that part of ministry, and that does help us continue moving forward into the digital age. So I know it's easier to fill out a tithing envelope and throw your cash in there or throw a check in there because that's the way we're used to doing things. But as we continue to move forward, as the universe is continually changing, because of the childlike within, I want to keep changing with it. And I want to keep interacting and playing the new games and the old games that continue reiterating themselves over this time. Thank you. God bless you. If you'll raise your hand and repeat after me. I love Him because He first loved me. Thank you. God bless you. We'll see you again on Wednesday night.